yeah, so I was aiming to, I had this series of videos for the consultancy firm Quadrat, and they one of the sessions was using REST to pull information from services, REST services, and also exposing data using REST. And that was all recorded in Swedish and not under the consent to share it. So I thought I was pretty much gonna do the same thing now, so we are able to share it and see how it works. And as I said in the invite, I had set up an account with Spotify, or yeah, I'm using my own account to, but you need to get an API key to in order to access the data. So what I'm gonna do is to just add a class calling it Spotify. Oops, I'm not sharing, am I? No. I'm gonna share my entire screen.
Yeah, we couldn't see anything.
No, good. Yeah, no, take the right one.
There we are.
Good. And so having Spotify access, and I'm gonna do a new view model using that. Spotify access. I'm gonna call the view model Spotify access as well. And gonna do a global action to bring that up. Global action create, so that we bring that up. Good. And I will also, that ended up on the other screen, just start the turnkey server to see that we have something working. And we don't, so I guess I have to make sure that it's using this. Ah, right, I'm gonna save this under another name, I guess. Save as and temp folder. And once I've saved it, I need to restart the server. Yeah, so now I have the new object, the new action create Spotify access and show, which is completely empty, but at least it's there. Can also bring this, gonna bring up a new browser window to look at the same thing. Yeah, maybe that. Good. So what we want to do firstly is to get communication going with Spotify. So I'm going to do a new button. I'm calling that get access token. tell you what, I'm going to do this view model as with placing containers to better use the space on the screen. And what's going to happen when I do get access token? I've looked up in the documentation, and we need to do something that I'm going to copy and paste in right now. It's using the self VM REST post operator. So what Spotify documentation told me was to use REST post, and they also said that this is the endpoint that we need to access. So if I point at this REST post, I can see it here, even if it might be too small. You can go on to the wiki on REST post as well. That showed up on the other screen. So there's lots of information on what you can do with REST post, but it's pretty straightforward. You send in an endpoint, and this is the user, and this is the password for that user, and that will do a standard authentication. And there are several ways to connect to the Spotify endpoint, but this is one of them. So I've gotten this from setting up an account, and I get these values to use to access. This one is actually a name to where we're going to define the headers and things. But here, these squiggly lines is that it tries to return the values and assign them to a variable called the vAccess token result. So I don't have that, so I'm going to add that one as a string. And this is meant to be a nesting, if so, name of nesting. So I'm gonna add a new nesting to this one and calling it this. So the name is not important, it's just so that it matches the one I refer to here. And the type, as these are constant, doesn't matter either, but I need to have a type. And having read the documentation, I know that I need to send in a specific header for this post to be valid, and I'm just copying that from where I had it before. So basically it's the content type, and it's want this application X your form URL encoded. Another thing that it requires me to send in, and this is specific to the Spotify API, is the grant type, and that should be client credentials, and that matches the access method that I have here. So having done this, I should be able to get the access token. So let's see if I can add an attribute to actually show the access token result here. And saving that, and then the UI is updated in the browser. Let's do it in this browser. So try to get the access token, and I get something back, which is a JSON result with a property, JSON property, access token, and the token, and then a bit of other attributes on this JSON object. So this is a good example on how it usually looks. We need to extract the access token from this JSON string, and that's no biggie, but still someone has to do it. So we're gonna go ahead and, just for show, adding a new button that we call extract access token. And how are we going to do that? We had the v access token result, and on this there's a on strings there is a operator called JSON get property, get prop. So that's a practical way to access properties from JSON strings. And let's go back and see what it was actually called. It's called access tokens. I'm going to copy it just to avoid making mistakes. And that's a string, so I'm going to have something like that. And what we want to do with that, well, let's put that in a let's put it in a property on this object that we have. So self dot access token, and assign it to this access token. Of course, we don't have the access token yet, so I'm going to add a new attribute, access token. So it suggests that that should be a string and persistent, and that's fine. So yeah, and maybe we probably want to show this property to make sure that we have everything working. So I'm going to show it down here. And get access token. Yeah, let's see. I'm going to save the model so that I see the field. Get access token, extract the access token, and that looks good. And also notice that since we save the access token in a new property on the object, we get the save button highlighted. And access token is typically valid, according to the Spotify documentation, it's valid an hour. So I can use this an hour. So I'm going to save this, and then I don't have to repeat those steps going forward. Yeah, so now we want to actually do something, and one thing that we can do is search the Spotify in the Spotify API. So let's add a button for, call that search. And I've prepared the call, and it looks like this. Again, it's the self VM, which is the root of the view model itself, and that has an operator rest get. We checked the rest post before, but this is a rest get, so that's a bit different how we access things. And we want to send into the API endpoint at Spotify, calling the verb search with a parameter q that equals the query that we want to pose to the API, and stating that the Spotify API should search for artists, and that we are using a bearer token, and that the token is actually the one that we have in the attribute access token that we just saved. So we need a new variable we query here, and that's a string preferably, and apply and close. So we need to be able to put in a value in the search, and that should probably go ahead of the search button, so the vQuery, and we're going to search it. And of course we don't need to call it vQuery, we can call display it as query even if it's catching the value into the variable vQuery. So and what do we want to do with this? Well, we will get a hefty result back, I guess, that we can call the search result and assign the output from REST GET to this. So I need a variable defined to match what I just wrote. So again, go with string, and probably I want to see what I return. So I'm gonna make sure that search result is displayed here, and I anticipate a lot of data, so I'm gonna make this span a few more columns, and yeah, that was not the right one. I'm gonna span a few more rows like this. So I get the access token, I extract the access token, I have it, I will pose a query and see the results up here if everything is according to plan. So I have the access token. Well, I can just, yeah, now it's a new access token every time you ask for it, and then we will need to save it. And let's search for an artist, Killers, and I get a result back, and it seems to have, yeah, it refers to the Killers, and there's some information about them, and let's see if there are other, yeah, and it also sent back the strokes, so it's a bit it widens the query to, but that's up to the Spotify definition of what it means. So now we got a lot of JSON back, and that will in any ordinary development environment, this would have been a time for getting to work to pull each property into an attribute on something that we define, because we want to make this data available in our model. But since this is a common use case, there's actually functions to handle this. So I'm going to just copy all this JSON data and assume that JSON data is representative for the information I want to catch. And I'm going to add a class called Spotify result. And from here I'm going to right click and say add attributes, associations and classes from clipboard JSON or XML. So what we do here is to analyze what we have in the clipboard, which is the answer we got back from Spotify, and follow the associations and create associations between different classes. So all of these classes got the name 1 behind them, and the class name in this context aren't really that important. It's the attributes that are important, that must match the data in the JSON, and also the association ends that must match. So, and how we will get the data into this structure then, because that's good. We have solved the first problem to actually have the structure to put it in there. But we also want to avoid having to actually pull and manage and instantiate all these one by one and assign every property ourselves. So there is a way to do this, and we're going to add a button, call that turn into objects, and that work should be as easy as an operator on the self VM again, called object JSON to objects. So JSON to objects creates objects, tries to follow associations, set attributes. So this is what we want to do, and the type where we want to start, and the string with the JSON content that we want to expand. So the type that we want to use was Spotify result. So a new object of this will be created, and the data that we want to put in here is the search result. So that would be enough to actually create one of these and return that. But let's hook that up to our Spotify access. I'm going to make this a one-to-one link, and in order to I'm going to say that the owner of this association end is Spotify access, and I do that by saying the aggregation is composite. Then I get the filled diamond. That's the same as a composite, and that governs things like if Spotify access is deleted, then the delete cascades into the Spotify result, that cascades into artist, etc. So everything of this aggregate, the composite of this, is deleted in one go. Good. So I can now catch in Spotify access the Spotify result, turn into objects. So this is actually a Spotify result object, but myself is a Spotify access object that has a Spotify result association end, and I want to assign that association end to this object that comes back from JSON to objects. Now I probably have these as objects, but that you won't believe me unless I show you. So I'm going to add a nested view model clause, and this is one way to go to follow the links here, but another way to go is to use this button, add column from model. So this shows me the Spotify access, which is the current context, and I'm going to follow to Spotify result, which is a single link, and it will build up the links or the expression here. And from this Spotify result, I want to follow the link to artists, and from artists I want to follow the link to items, which I believe is the one that actually holds the answers. So now I have the expression built up for me, and I'm going to do a grid nesting out of that expression, and that gave me this. Let's see. Yeah. All right, it went outside the placing container. I'm going to move it in, move it up. Good. And I'm going to say that this actually will take up some allow to grow, or it won't behave. So I want to show my items here, and I can follow the type information to get the name, and to get all the values that are available here. Let's say popularity as well. and I'm gonna remove this, and let's do like this. I can follow to another association. Yeah, I wanted to show the images, but the images are in a multi association, so I'm gonna have to write my own expression to get those. I'm gonna write image there, and then the expression is gonna be self, and now I'm in the context of one of these items, and it has a multi-link to images, and from the images I'm just gonna pick the first one to make it a single one, and then that will be okay to show here. And let's see how this will behave in so I have the access token, and I can write a query. I will write the same one, the killers, search, and I get a lot of JSON. Let's make this bigger. And I want to turn that JSON into objects, and I have now turned it into objects, and I can see all the answers that Spotify returned on my query. Good. So this image, we're going to save this and head back to this, because let's see. This image property is just returning the object as such. That wasn't any good, really. We need to return the URL for the image and apply that, and saving that. Now we have the URL for the image, but we can do better. We can take that URL and use a tag value. So tag values are used to impose further interpretation to the data. So it's just not a string, the data is actually an image URL. So I'm going to add the tag value to say that you should treat this particular data as an image URL. And having done that, I would get the images to show up on the search result. And probably I can do any kind of search, and I will get a new search result. If I search on Green Day, I get the JSON back, and I turn that into objects, and I get a couple of bands associated with Green Day. So, very good. Now we have shown how to access a REST API and getting a lot of JSON back, interpreting the JSON any schema it might have into model for us, so that we can treat it as first-class citizens in our world. And having done that, we can do things like the auto forms on all this data. In order to be able to browse things. So I can find for every class available, like for the images, for example, I can search, and here the URL is, but of course that isn't resolved as a string or as an image, because this is still just a string to the model. In order to get that to work, I need to use my auto form images seeker and bring that up. So the outer forms is nothing special. It's just it's exactly the same as if you have done a view model yourself. It's just automatic based on the type information. So I can go in here and change it. So the URL should have a tag value on it saying that the data is image URL, and say that this is true. Having saved that and searching, I will get the images in this grid as well. And now I can see all the images. They are different sizes. So this, the same band have, so if I were to follow, let's say if I go into showing this image, I can see who owns it. It's this item, so I can go into that item and see that that is actually Blink 182. And if I want to hear songs from them, I can post this into a browser and to get the Spotify to play it for me. Good. Let's see where, if I've mentioned things that I was supposed to mention. Yeah, that was pretty much it when it comes to pulling data from other services. So now we end up with the we want the ability to expose data to others, someone that wants data from us. And what kind of data? Well, that could be anything, but let's use the data we have now. So if we want to give out data that pretty much is one of these items, we can do so by simply saying that this should be allowed to access by REST. I'm going to take this and just do a notepad to remember the URL. So this is the identity of this particular object, and of course we have many objects of items, but we know we have this. And what we want to do in order to allow anyone to call REST, because it's not necessarily a good thing that everything should be REST exposed. We need to decide what UIs or what view models that we should be able to display this way. So I'm going to go on this outer form items 1. I'm going to select it and I'm going to say REST allow. If you find this content interesting, please like, share and subscribe. There's also one UI allowed. And you might want to say that that should be false if you don't want to have people stumble upon data that you want to only dissolve using REST. So then you can turn that off, but we're not going to do that for now. And having done that, we can make some changes to this in order to make it more interesting to I'm going to delete these buttons because I'm not interested in allowing it to set anything. And also these images, I'm going to delete that as well and add it back as a nesting. So the multi-link to the images, and the images, I'm going to add the URL and height and a few things. Maybe the width as well. And I'm going to remove this first initial helper that I got as a string because I don't want that. If I'm fairly certain that this is a view model that's only supposed to be consumed with REST, I might want to turn on off the placing hints, because then this is meaningless, how everything renders on screen. So I can simply turn that off to don't get confused by that. So this is the only definition for my for the details of what I'm going to expose as REST. So I know that I might as well also want to, let's do it like this. We're going to copy it to make this clearer and paste it, and that means that I've got a copy of it here, and I'm going to rename that for REST exposed item, and make sure that that behaves, and then I'm going to paste that into here so I remember it, because in order to allow anyone to catch to get REST data from us, we need to send in a verb called REST, and then the view model's name, in this case REST exposed item, and then we also want to do what REST verb we are going to use. In this case we're going to do a get, and in the documentation it explains that we can do all the verbs: get, post, put, patch, delete, etc. And there's ways to find out in the view model what verb has been used to access it. And we also need to anchor it in an object, because this is a rooted view model. So this would be a valid request for a REST exposed item. And there you have it. So this is JSON data that anyone else doing a system might want to consume. And it's very fast and easy to do changes to REST services that you create this way. So if you're only mocking things up, this would be a good alternative to get things going fairly fast. If I were to just add an arbitrary attribute to here and call send in a static string and saving it, it immediately shows up here. So this is one way to get control of what you send. Just do view model columns and put data expressions here to get access to, or to control whatever you want to show here. Of course, the model now is not important. We are one level above the model. Now we're in the view model. So if I don't, or if my consumer doesn't like that I call this association, in this case, in this JSON for images, he wants it to be pictures instead, that's totally fine. That has nothing to do with the data as such. Pictures. But the expression still needs to be images, as long as we call it images here. But saving that and refreshing this updates the definition of the JSON. Of course, if someone else doing MDriven needs to consume this MDriven produced JSON, one could simply allow to receive this data by add attributes and association clauses from clipboard with JSON. that's all, and now it's called pictures, but we're going to revert that with Control Z. Good. And let's see. Of course, when you do this, you might want to do authentication to ensure that no one gets data without that shouldn't have access, and that's also easily done. The pattern that we normally use for identity, we call it sys singleton and the sys user, pointing out the current user, is implemented. So if you create a sys user with a really complex password, you can use that as a basic authentication to your REST services. But you can also implement more advanced access rights with the GWT, Java Access Token. No, what do you call it? I don't remember. To control whom has access to things. And of course, it's not only limited to static data output as this. You can, let's try to use one of the search APIs as well. So if we go back to the model, we have let's search for, we can actually search in our items, out of forum items. Yeah, that was the search. We come here from this is the object. I need to search the seeker, this one. So I'm going to take this name and remember that, and I'm going to turn on that view model. I'm going to say that REST is allowed, and that would mean that, oops, oh, sorry, I accidentally stopped the recording. No, I didn't. Good. So that would mean that I could do something like this. Get from the seeker, and that takes I think it needs a null attribute here in order to behave. I'm going to remove that going forward, but we also need to actually search for anything. We need to fill in this vseek param. So I'm going to send in a parameter like this, the question mark and vseek param, and what do we want to search for? Let's search for green, and that would return something like, yeah, I haven't saved this where I said that as was REST allowed. I think it was that. Okay, that doesn't work. So did I turn it on? REST allowed. Yes. Did I save it? Gonna see if without the parameter, still not good. Localhost rest get. did this the wrong order. So it's first the view model, then you say that you're gonna do a get. And now I have no parameters, so the result is really empty. But yeah, I have a parameter, so why isn't it filter green? Maybe there was no so I'm searching on images. Okay, images. That makes it harder. So what's on images? Height. It only searches on the URL. Let's redo this so that I search on the items that I intended to search for. Images, detail, where are the items? Item seeker. So this is the item seeker. Good. I'm gonna make that rest allowed, saving. I'm gonna change this one to search on the items, and I'm gonna have the parameter green. Now I get hits on anything called containing green somewhere. Let's see. Yeah, green, green, green. And if I were to have blue here instead, there's nothing in my data that matches blue. But I remember that I searched for the killers. So I'm gonna see if I just write killers. Yeah, now I found those. So immediately we have done an active REST service that actually can receive data and act on it and return data out. And one of the effects of using our seeker logic with multiple alternatives, you know how this works. It's really powerful. We first search for the first orange expression, and if that returns null, we try the next one and the next one and the next one. So this is one way to be Googlified, to have one search box with multiple ways to return data based on the single string. So that would mean that I could probably search on an identity as well. And of course you control this during design if you want to allow to search for multiple objects or just a few. So this is probably correct, just returning the one when we search for an identity. Homegrown. I'm going to search for homegrown. Also still only one. But if I search for only part of this string, no, I'm gonna do it smaller. At least there I got two. Good. And also in the documentation, you can, on the wiki, you can see how to return status codes, etc. if you want to override what's returned back from a REST call like this. Yeah, so working with JSON is really common when we talk to anyone else but ourselves. So it's a central thing to be able to turn data into JSON and be able to turn JSON into objects to work with them strongly typed, because that's the real benefit. And in order to do this, we have actually reused, as you can see, we have reused the view model concept not only for GUI but also for these REST services, both for exposing REST but I'm also going to show you how to easily take any type of data and turn it into REST based on a view model. And I'm going to show you with the debugger. I think that's the easiest one. It's going to start this one with XML and the debugger. And if I were to take one of these items, so the class was items1, all instances. We can see my data is here, and I'm going to grab one of these. Comes up as an auto-generated form with all the properties and all the links. And I'm going to show you this, what we call JSON workbench. So JSON is our strategy to use view models to turn anything into JSON and back, actually. So I'm going to grab this object, which is represented by this green dot, and drop it here, saying that this is the object that we are rooted in now. And as such, it says that, well, then you can use these view models because these are the ones that type-wise agree with what you have. So I'm going to take the auto form items1, and I want that as JSON. So I immediately get that data as JSON. So that's all and good. You can do any view model. You don't need to have it as a UI or as a REST service. You can just use it to get JSON. And of course, this is not just a property of the debugger. These are actually operators that one can use. That's called JSON. So if we were to do something like this, take the first item and then as JSON, and let's see, the first one is the view model name, and then if we should skip empties, so the view model name, and if I don't know it, I can take the type items1 and have the property view models, which is maintained automatically, and find auto forms items1, and then I say skip empties false, and apply and close, and executing that will give me a result which is just the JSON that I wanted to see. Yeah, now it did it for all the objects, and maybe I just want it for the first one, as I said. I think I said, but I didn't do like that. But this JSON concept is really, really strong because it allows you to merge data, and that's a very common use case. When someone posts a big chunk of data to you in JSON format, how are you going to know that this user actually want to add images, for example, to this grid, to this list of images? The concept is really simple. It assumes that the first attribute of any list is actually the unique key. This is fairly common standard practice to have a unique key in things that you want to be able to add, etc. So that's not a big issue, I think. But we're going to make sure that our this one view model that we auto forms item1. The tricky thing is that whenever we do these UIs, we tend to automatically enter read-only expressions here. So I'm going to remove these because these will hinder what I want to show, be able to write data back. And I'm going to save that and head back here, and I'm going to reread this view model. And so being able to write things back is more or less like this, that I want this one to be unique, the key. So I'm going to just say anything here as long as it's unique in this list. I'm going to say Hans, and I'm going to do some tweaks on this data, and then I'm going to apply this JSON into this object. And the save button highlighted, which is a sign of this being updated. So if I follow the link from this route to images, I can see there is a new image created, which has the URL, which is the key in this JSON. That is Hans, and has the values 641 and 641, 641. And this also allows me to, I can save that, to actually delete data if someone posts in things, because it's really a big problem to know about existence. What should existence mean? Is the sender only lazy to send only new things, or is the sender complete, sending the complete data? So that's the difference between apply and merge. So apply, it assumes that the data that comes is complete. So if I were to remove this from the data I send, the object is deleted. So this is a really effective way to do all your merging back and forth with JSON data, keeping everything strongly typed as soon as possible, turning it from JSON into objects, and having control in your database. And we're out of time, but I hope you have had a chance to get awed about the beautiful things I've shown today. Any questions?
How long would this take to write manually from scratch, you think? A week? 2?
Yeah. Yes. So it's pretty amazing that we can just during an hour and during me talking at the same time, pull data from a REST service, get everything structured in a database, do UI to actually show that data, do REST services to expose that data, and so and that's what it's all about. The technology shouldn't hinder you; it should be there for you, and that was what MDriven is all about. Good. So as I said in the beginning, we will postpone next month's meeting and get back in August, and hope to see you then. Thank you very much for today.
Yeah. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.